All right. So our first panelist is Hallie, and she's going to go ahead and tell us a little bit about college planning through her viewpoint.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm very happy to be here with my esteemed colleagues. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Just bear with me for a quick second. Great. So I'm hoping that's working. It's not like we haven't been on Zoom for 2 years, right? So I am very pleased to join you tonight. I am the local of sorts here. We are in the TE School District. Delaware Valley Friends School is located in Paoli, right behind the train station. We serve students grades 1 through 12, most commonly living with specific learning differences in the area of reading, written expression, and or math. Commonly also students who have ADHD, executive functioning deficits, auditory processing disorder, expressive receptive language disorders, and oftentimes, especially now, we're seeing a lot of comorbidity with anxiety, depression, and working memory challenges. And I just wanted to quickly give you a visual before we talk about what we do as a college counseling kind of mission at our school, is to talk about kind of what the common threads of who we deal with are. I think we are in a really wonderful place in the Philadelphia metro area where we have an abundance of professionals, an abundance of schools to serve students who learn differently. And I would hope that my peers would agree that no two students learn the same way. There's a little bit of a joke of sorts that you have, no two students with dyslexia are going to read the same way either, right? Every student is different. And I think part of our great benefit of being in this area is that you have a vast array of professionals in schools who can help you and your students at any different point in your journey. At DV Friends, we are a Quaker school. And so we really try to lean on our Quaker mission of seeing the uniqueness and the value of each individual student and meeting them where they are, but also pushing them at the right rate, which for our students ends up in traditionally a college placement. We do not have a set bridge program. That's a postgraduate program, so I'll be fully transparent about that. We really try to focus on the placement and knowing that we are always there if a student needs to check in with us. They have a very strong advising program all through their grades 1 through 12 experience with the intention of transitioning to college, knowing that they can always email us. I say once a DV student, always a DV student. So this class, for example, I'll just show you a quick visual here. The class of 22 submitted 186 applications to 93 different colleges and were accepted by about 70 different colleges. And this represents that group here. So I approach college counseling. Our office works very closely with all the teachers and our social emotional counselor. I have the benefit of having a colleague there. My background is in social emotional and admissions counseling. We work in tandem to really have a best fit and family-centered approach where I partner with the teachers and really do a wraparound approach. So we're really embedding executive functioning skills and we're embedding advocacy and resilience skills with the writing instruction, with the reading remediation, with the skills they're going to take later on. For example, we just had a 3-day senior trip 2 weeks ago. I got to plan, and we did a lot of work on advocacy, everything from how do you read a syllabus to Title IX and consent conversations, because that's important. Students knowing about their medications and any interactions. I think there's a big part of the college transition that's beyond academic, right? There's also the personal transition. And there's a lot of things I think all students would benefit to know. So what we're really trying to do is reframe the conversation. So we can make this a very individual and a very personal experience, which I think would benefit your students as well, coming from a public school as well, making it just about them, right? That experience is just theirs and not their older siblings, and not their cousins, not their parents, right? Even the colleges have changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. But reframing that conversation from a focus on admission and acceptance to more of a persistence in graduation, right? The acceptance letter is not the goal in this process. It really isn't. The goal is that diploma. That goal is that gainful employment, right? If you think about the long game, that's what I think benefits students who learn differently the most. So again, reframing that conversation so that the goal is not just acceptance and admission, but persistence in graduation, and what skills can they take along that road with them. And as parents, I think it's really beneficial for you to guide them on that process, and again, in tandem with their teachers and their counselors, to build up those skills. in preparation for this, I was thinking about what themes emerge most in my work. And I found about 5 that I think were the key takeaways that when I talk to students around the country who learn differently. First was awareness of how they learn. Can they articulate? Second one, articulation. Can they articulate their style of learning, what they need, and what that's going to look like in the higher education? And that's another panel discussion for another day, all the accommodations processes, right? I'm sure my colleagues and I could go on another whole dissertation on that. Advocacy, can they advocate for what they need and also for what those around them need? A big theme we hear is our alumni coming back and talking about, you know what, I helped my roommate get services, or they know ADA law to be able to get the services that they are legally entitled to get. Executive functioning and resilience. So awareness, articulation, advocacy, executive functioning skills, and resilience. And some of those fall under executive functioning, but making sure that's there too. So those are my kind of 5 key takeaways that I think all students who learn differently and their parents should know as they transition to whatever the next step is. And I think if you think about it from a global career perspective as well, likely will also carry on to those additionally. I'm going to stop sharing here so I can start to see, there we go. I'm going to kind of wrap up my little bit because I'm cognizant of the time. I want sure my colleagues have some time as well. I'm sure I'm forgetting a million things. But I look forward to hearing your questions and being able to weigh in that way. So thank you for having me, and I'll pass it on to my next colleague.
Thank you, Haley. That was great. Our next speaker is Amanda Tingle-Oline. Amanda is over at AIM. Take it away, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And Hallie, that was amazing. And now I'm trying to make sure I don't say exactly what you just said. So as Wendy said, my name is Amanda Tingle-Oline. I am the Director of College and Career Counseling at AIM Academy. We are a private institution located right in Conshohocken within the Plymouth White Marsh School District. So our school serves grades 1 through 12. Our focus in the upper school for grades 9 through 12 is to get them to understand about themselves first. And that kind of is what guides them throughout this whole college process. Our school serves students with language-based learning disabilities, very similar to Hallie. So we have, coupled with that, just like Hallie was saying, we see a lot of students right now, especially experiencing anxiety, but also their disabilities are kind of coupled with executive functioning issues and severe ADHD. So we kind of are seeing the whole gambit. So in that regard, we are very hands-on institution. We are project-based in a lot of ways, but also we are college preparatory. So we prepare our students to go on to college, but we also know that students may not always go to college. So my philosophy in our department is to make sure that we are just preparing the students for life after AIM, whatever that means for them. So throughout 9th and 10th grade, they are taking different classes about career exploration and understanding a little bit more about what jobs are out there beyond just the stereotypical teacher, nurse, doctor, all of that. And really getting them to understand what their interests and what their passions are and what their true talents are that might not be school related, and how can they use that in the real world. In 11th grade, they have a class with me called College 101, where they're learning the ins and outs of the college process, just to kind of help like ease that pain, I guess you can say, and ease the stress of this whole process. Because as they say, it can get very overwhelming. So during that time in 11th grade, they go on a week-long college tour visit with me, where they visit local colleges and get to understand what is it like to visit a college? What is it like to ask those personal questions about what they're looking for? Do they want a big school versus a small school? Do they want private versus public in the city or suburban or out in the country? So this way they just kind of get an understanding of what do they want in this. I think for so long things have been kind of done for them. So in this way, it's getting them to own what is their future going to look like. As part of our senior year program, in order to get them really comfortable with college, we run a dual enrollment program. So all of our students, our schedule is very flexible, and we are lucky enough that our students are able to go take a college class at one of our local institutions in the afternoon during their senior year, 2 days a week. So whether that be at Cabrini University, Arcadia University, Montgomery County Community College, Temple University, or the Close School of Entrepreneurship at Drexel University. Those are our 5 partners. So students get to choose both semesters what type of class they want to take. The whole point is not for them to earn college credit. If they do, that's awesome. But we want them to get to understand what is it like being in a real classroom with other students who do not learn like them, and what do they do in this situation? How do they read a syllabus? How do they access the textbook? How do they even learn how to study from a textbook? How do they approach a professor? How do they access accommodations and have to have those conversations with professors on the fact that they learn differently and they need certain accommodations in order to do well? So we practice all of that with them while having a supportive study hall with those students. So they are back at AIM working with us on how to do all of the college level activities. We find that this is really pertinent to their success in the first year of college. Now that they kind of understand how to take a college class, how to work like a Blackboard system, how to respond to emails, all of those EF skills upon entry into college, then they are more worried about the social atmosphere of like the roommate, the other typical college things compared to their academics. Just to kind of give you a snapshot as to what our class of 22 is attending. These are the schools that our students are attending from this year. You can see it's a wide variety. I find that especially upon entering high school, our 9th and 10th grade parents are so concerned about the type of school. And our philosophy is not about the type. It's all about what is the best fit for the student. That's our motto. So I tell them first off, they have to feel comfortable with the student. It shouldn't have to feel about the name brand of the school. And I'm very lucky that my administration supports me in our thinking. It is all about what's going to be the best fit. And maybe college isn't the best fit, and that's okay too. What is our plan going to be? So it kind of gives you a wide variety of what our students are looking at, everywhere from Bucknell to Drexel to Montgomery County Community College to Northeastern to University of Michigan. So we have a wide variety. I think this is what also tends to amaze our parents, is that it is possible, but we tell them it doesn't have to be for every student. Going into our bridge program, which I am lucky enough to also be the director of. So we have a bridge program called the AIM Advantage, where AIM alumni and actually other students too can work with one of our AIM teachers or even me once a week via Zoom to make sure that they are on top of their college work. So this kind of alleviates a lot of the stresses of the student going away to college and feeling like they don't have any type of support while they're trying to navigate the accommodations, get comfortable with accessing those types of extra supports. They at least have someone there who has known about their learning difference, who knows how they work as a student, and can check in with them weekly to make sure that they're on top of all their papers, they're checking their email. So about 30% of the work is EF support, while the other 60-70% all depends on what the schoolwork is. Typically, we tend to see a lot more like paper writing, outlining 4 papers, and maybe making study plans. So again, it alleviates a lot of the stress between the parent and the student as they're going away. While the student is gaining that independence away from home for the first time, they still have that support system. So majority of the time they are working with me, my other college counselor, or maybe one of their like speech and OT teachers, someone that they've had a really good relationship throughout their time at AIM, and they work with them via Zoom once a week. So I guess the biggest takeaway that I've mentioned and our big thing that we proposed at AIM is what is the best fit. I always guide my students on whenever they're visiting a college, regardless of whether they want to use their accommodations in college or not, because of course I have a lot of those students who think they're too cool to use them compared to others who really embrace their learning difference. I always say, go to the learning support office, whatever that looks like at whatever school you're visiting, because that's going to be a really good tell of what type of support you're going to get at the school. Introduce yourself, let them know who you are. We always find that any Ames student that goes off to college, their professors are always amazed by the fact that they have no problem letting them know that they have dyslexia or whatever their learning difference is. They will shake their hand, and they are typically what we're finding to be the most appropriate college student. And it's even funnier because this past week, an alumni came back to visit, and she told us that she was recommended to be a writing tutor in the writing center because of how awesome her papers were. However, she is severely dyslexic. So it's just kind of funny just seeing like how things go. So from there, that's just our biggest proponent, is making sure to find the right fit.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amanda. Next up, we have Amy Gillespie from Hilltop Preparatory School.
Hi, everyone. So I'm from Hilltop Prep, which is a small independent school in Rosemont. We're right down the street from Villanova University. The one way we're a little bit different from my colleagues here is we deal mostly with we work mostly with students who have non-language based learning differences. So we are working mostly with students who are diagnosed with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. So we have a slightly different program, except that Hallie and Amanda already said all of the things I would say. It's about the fit. It's about finding the place that's right. A number of years ago, we had a Grand Friends Day at our school, and a new student who was relatively new, his family came in, and an aunt came up to me and said, well, where do these students go to college? And I looked at her and said, wherever they want to. Now, there is a typical, most of our students look at small liberal arts schools because they're coming from a school. This year we are graduating 12 seniors. So the idea of going and sitting in a classroom with 300 people for an intro to biology class is a little terrifying. So our students do tend to look at smaller schools, but sometimes we do have that kid who wants to go to Penn State main campus and major in aeronautical engineering. And that is what he does. But some of the things that we try to work on, we do the executive function piece. We do a lot with social skills, and we do a lot with self-advocacy. And part of also what I've learned over the years we needed to address was the vocabulary and the language about going to college. We had students talking about, not wanting to go somewhere with a lot of Greeks, and other students who were appalled that you would be so prejudiced against people from the country of Greece, and having to explain that, no, this is, fraternities and sororities and how they work. So part of what we started to do was build in some of that, early on, just what's the difference between a college and a university? What's a major? What's a minor? What does Greek life mean? What does student life mean? What are those things that you find on campus that you're going to need to navigate? We also, a few years ago, added a transition class, an employability and transition class, where students have the opportunity to actually work on Cabrini's campus 2 days a week. And we found that for many students, that was really meaningful for them, because it was an opportunity to see the social side of a college campus, to sit and talk with other college students, to figure out how to navigate a campus. I mean, Cabrini is not a huge campus, but for some students, it's the biggest one they've ever been on. So once they found that they could sit and have a conversation with other students, and that they could find their way around campus, they became much more comfortable seeing themselves as potential college students. I think what else? Sorry, I don't have a neat graphic to show you all of our acceptances. I'm not good with thinking ahead on things like that. But we do have a nice mix of schools that students choose to go to, where they are looking at, some students are going to community college, some are going to trade schools, and others are going to traditional four-year colleges, or to LD specific colleges. We have a number of students who have chosen to go to Beacon in Florida. We also work with Beacon and Landmark to offer some dual enrollment classes. We also offer our juniors and seniors the opportunity to do dual enrollment through Delaware County Community College or Cabrini University. And then we offer a gap year program called Horizons. Part of it is similar to what Amanda was talking about. We have one option where students can just have someone to check in with twice a week to see that they are staying on track, and if they need help navigating any of the services, if they want someone to look over their paper for them, to make sure they've got their accommodations in place. We have another level of that of Horizons where students actually remain as students at Hilltop for another year. They do almost a full year of dual enrollment classes, again, to get that practice in being in a larger classroom with neurotypical students, navigating the college process and seeing themselves successful in those classes. And they do that with support from teachers at Hilltop. And we do offer an option for some students to live in our dorm as part of that program. If they would like, we have a very small boarding program. It's a 5-day boarding program. So a Horizon student can opt to live in the dorm and have that away from home experience for a few days a week. The other thing that we offer is all of our students, when they graduate, they get an anchor. And that is one faculty member who chooses to stay in touch with that student after they leave Hilltop. It is very informal, and it is, the students know they cannot request the teacher picks them. And it's just someone who emails them every couple of months to say, hey, how's everything going? And again, do you need a paper looked at? Are you getting your accommodations? Is there anything you need? And to have someone who is not family and who's not a peer to be able to go to if there is a question about or a concern that they don't know who to go to. They've got their anchor that they can come back to and ask for guidance. One of the other ways that we practice self-advocacy is starting in 9th grade, students at midterm and finals must meet with a transition teacher to request a letter of accommodation for any tests where they need any kind of accommodation. And we tell them from the get-go that we're not going to tell you no, unless you ask for something absolutely ridiculous. The student who wanted to use Grammarly for all of her essays, we're like, no, part of the English class is knowing how to use proper grammar on your own. But it's mostly coming in, asking for extended time, asking to use the computer for their writing, asking to sit in a particular place in the room so that they're not distracted. And it gives students an opportunity to think about the accommodations that they've had, that people have put in place for them, and to articulate why they help them. And the idea is to prepare them for that college meeting when they are the ones, it's no longer the parents who can go in and say, this is what my child needs. This is where the student has to go in and say, this is what helps me be the best student I can be. And so we want them to practice that and really think about why it is they need the accommodations they need. So those are kind of some of the things that we're doing.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amy. And our last speaker is Jason Hoffman of the Woodland School.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen as well. Bring up my PowerPoint. Hopefully you can all see that. That's just a brief overview of the Woodland School. Been around for quite a while. We are a K through PG program serving a wide variety of students with learning differences. We are a Wilson partner school. That is a huge part of our lower and middle school programming, especially when it comes to language-based learning differences. We are a landmark college partner school as well, not only for a dual enrollment class, but also for some other professional development things we do. We have an AP program. Our upper school is heavily focused on experiential learning. So for instance, in the end of the senior year, we require our seniors to do an internship at a local business or hospital, or really wherever they choose to get them interested in their field. We require service hours because we very much value community. We have a code of ethics we sort of live by called the Path. Our mascot is the Warriors. So all of our students follow this code of ethics called the Path, and service is a huge, huge part of that. We have a advisory program as well, which I'm in charge of. which is also heavily integrated both into our regular classroom academics, but also experiential learning. And kind of just like everybody else, we also have a post-grad mentoring program. We call it the CAP program. It's really an advising program where students are matched up with teachers or administrators they form good relationships with and value to keep that connection alive, to support them in the same situations all my peers mentioned, with issues with academics in college, with leaving Woodland and going on to the next step of their education. So my apologies for echoing a lot of the things you already heard, but we do have a bridge program, and it's actually for students entering ninth grade all the way through graduating seniors. It's a 4-week morning-based program. It's focused on academic enrichment, but also foundational skill building, especially in our lower levels. The 4 main courses down here are a little different than your traditional academic courses, but they're really focused on those areas to provide success for students when they enter their freshman year of college. This 21st Century Study Skills course is a really strong blend of both assistive technology and executive functioning development, because those are 2 key skills that help our students really succeed when they go to the next step of their education. So the Bridge program also in the summer involves college visits. So we go to 3 local universities to immerse the students in the world of college academics. We do some lessons there, we take tours, but like so many of my peers said, it's about getting students comfortable with the next step of their education and really showing them the possibilities that they have. I mean, I hate to say it and be negative, but many students with learning differences can have a jaded view of ongoing education. So that's a big part of Woodland, is really helping all students realize what they are capable of, because it really starts there. You know, some students come in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, really downtrodden and really unable to see themselves be successful in any type of education. But you know, we work really hard to show kids what they're capable of, because they're capable of great things. We also have a PG year. We have a partnership with Rosemont. It's a non-boarding year, but it is a year where the student attends in a small cohort Rosemont in the morning for intro level classes, and then comes to Woodland in the afternoon for courses in mathematics, writing, and metacognition, and assistance with those courses at Rosemont. So here's a brief overview. Our college guidance program, it really starts in 8th grade. So our school year just wrapped up, or it is wrapping up like literally tomorrow. But I've been teaching an 8th grade class, and you know, that might seem a little bit early to some people out there, but once again, it's about teaching and instilling in the students what they are capable of, no matter what their learning difference. Although in 8th grade, it's a very much introductory program, throughout a student's experience at Woodland, it goes much deeper. It's really focused on that holistic, individualized support for that student. And I know that echoes exactly what you heard from all my colleagues, but it really is about finding that individualized focus for every single student, because like I believe it was Hallie said, no 2 students read the same, and no 2 students have those same sort of goals. So it's really about finding what's best for that student and supporting them in their journey as they explore. I agree with so many of the different character traits that were mentioned tonight, but really starting with that work ethic in a student and building and developing that, which leads to self-advocacy, has been such a positive recipe for lifelong success. The advocacy and work ethic, when a student sets foot on a college campus or a trade school or whatever it is really, it's one of the strongest skills that I see leading to ongoing success. So a huge part of the college guidance program at Woodland is focused on that. Throughout each year at Woodland, all students have a college guidance class. In freshman year, it's a freshman seminar class. So it's not only getting them used to high school, but it's also having them think about their ongoing goals and you know, what they want to do for the next step of their education. It also focuses on heavily understanding students' own learning differences and understanding why they get the accommodations they do, and why they may, you know, have to deal with certain things differently than their peers, even though they may be diagnosed the same. So freshman seminar is about understanding the possibility, although you know, every single student has, and then as time goes on in college guidance 10, 11, and certainly 12, it's about all those pieces of the post-secondary puzzle. You know, it says college guidance, but really it certainly is post-secondary education. I have many schools who go to trade school, who take gap years, who need a little break from education, who go into the military. It's about that individualized fit for the student. We also use the Naviance college guidance software, and I'm definitely heavily invested in career exploration. So we use a program called Career Explorer that students can take multiple times to help them understand their career strengths and where they lie. There's a brief overview. I know that's a little crowded on the screen right there, but that's sort of just a rundown. But really, once a student comes in ninth grade, all parts of that college and post-secondary application process, research process, all the different steps are handled in partnership with the family, with the student, to prepare them for the next step of their education. So I don't need to go into all those, but that's just a brief overview. And like I said, I want to be very conscious of time here, but it's really a match to be made and not a prize to be won. It's not about that acceptance letter. It's about finding the fit that's honestly going to make the student happy. It really is. It's about the student having that faith in themselves to understand that they can go on with their education and reach those goals that perhaps when they were younger, they were told they couldn't reach, or that college might be out of the picture. I certainly don't believe in limiting any student's potential. So the college guidance program overall is really about instilling the passion and the hope in that student so they can continue to be lifelong learners. So that is about it. Thank you, Wendy.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm going to go ahead and ask a question that was posed from registration, and Maggie's going to ask a couple of questions that were also posed in registration. And then we're going to stop the recording and allow the audience to ask the panelists questions. So the first question, panelists, is how can a parent and student objectively evaluate the quality of one of the disability offices or support programs versus another program or disability office? What are the key things that you guys look for? And any of you can take a stab at the question first.
Amanda, were you raising your hand? You wanted to go first? Oh, okay. I think the short answer, if you don't mind, I'll chime in, is it depends, right? There's going to be a lot of things in the college admissions process where it depends, right? A lot of the things that we're used to at the K-12 level in terms of logistics and in terms of quality assurance and the safeguards, basically, right? You think of an IEP, you think of a 504, there's safeguards in place, right? There's certain things that legally happen from a K-12 perspective that are all out the window once you get to higher ed, right? That consistency is gone. A lot of the regulations are gone, and it's very much in the hands of the universities. So this is a great question, and if my colleagues have a better suggestion, I welcome it, but it's a very hard thing to figure out. So my perspective is think about you and your child first, and isolate what it is that you're looking for, right? If your child doesn't need certain things and this college has the best whatever department, that's irrelevant, right? But if your child is going to need access to audiobooks, or your child's going to need access to an executive functioning coach to meet with regularly, okay, great. Do they have that on campus? Or is that something where you're going to now be contracting with an outside provider to get some kind of executive functioning coaching or helping, or a bridge program like my colleagues' schools have here? So for me, the first part is really examining critically and writing down, even like just making a list, right? My child uses these things at school. This is in their IEP. It's not like the IEP just transfers. It doesn't happen. And here's what we're looking for. Asking those hard questions, but also recognizing that sometimes the disability office professionals are not going to do an entire read for an applicant, right? It might happen later, right? You're going to get a lot more robust information after you're a deposited student. So taking some things with a grain of salt and asking the hard questions when you can, but also recognizing that the admissions offices do not know the answers. They don't always know those nuances. Don't hold it against them. A lot of times they're young 20-something-year-olds who are your regional reps who do not know every nuance of every learning support program at their university. But you know what they can do? They can direct you to the disability office. They can direct you to the resource folks. So just doing your due diligence and granting yourself and those professionals some grace as well, knowing that it is an ongoing conversation. That's kind of my takeaways.
Great, thank you so much. Amy, do you have something that you want to add?
I would also add, building on what Hallie said, don't be afraid to ask the admissions office to point you in the direction of the student success office or whatever it's called. I know in the past there have been parents who said, well, I don't want them to know that my child is going to need these services. Well, you know what, if they're going to hold it against your child in the admissions process, then that's not going to be a school that's going to support them anyway. And in our case, you know, they're coming from Hilltop anyway, they're going to know. It says it right in our school profile. The other thing I think is important too, is when you are doing the tour, even if it's not part of the tour, even if you go find it afterwards, stop into the student support office. Where is it located? I used to always say you want to make sure it's not in the basement tucked away somewhere. And then someone pointed out that back at that point, Cabrini's office was in the basement. I was like, but it's right next to the cafeteria, so it doesn't count. But you want it to be in a place where you don't feel like you need to put on the, you know, Groucho Marx glasses to walk in. You want it to be in a place. I love when I go visit a school and it's in the first floor of the library. My background is actually as a librarian, so I just think that that is the perfect place for it to be.
Jason, Amanda, do you have anything else that you want to add, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I really echo everything that Hallie and Amy said. I really do. Self-understanding is key. I would argue on a very practical level, when you go to visit these offices, one, make it a point to visit the Office of Disability Services or Academic Support, whatever they may call it, different names, different places. But on a very practical level, I always check out number of staff, and I always check out interconnectedness between other offices. You know, depending on the college, it might not all be a one-stop shop. You know, they might have to direct you to the writing center in a different building. So I always try to chat with the staff at a disability service office to see how they work with other offices, because that's going to be pretty important when a student goes away to a brand new environment. How they navigate their different resources is huge in the process.
And just going off of what Jason said, just a little tidbit, by going to those offices, also trying to find out how much turnover there is with staff. If you see that there's a lot of turnover and they can't really answer a lot of your questions, and that is like their center for the support, that usually is a good indicator of what type of support or how it's going to be run while your student is there.
And I just wanted to follow up, Jason, because so you said the interconnectedness with different offices. Can you give me an example of like what kinds of offices would need that sort of, like you mentioned writing center, so that sounds like a pretty important
Sure,
one.
like writing center, assistive technology. It really depends on the college campus and how they organize their support system. It really may be different offices working in tandem, and if that's the way that whole college chooses to run, let's say their umbrella of academic support, disability services should usually be the first stop, and they can point you where you need to go. And sometimes that's counseling, sometimes that's health services if the student has medical needs. It could be housing. It's really, I like to, when chatting with somebody from disability services, I want to make sure that it's evident that they have comfortability working with all offices to make sure the student is getting what they need.
Great, thank you. Maggie, do you want to ask one of the questions from registration?
Yeah, actually, well, I think that one was a repeat that I was going to ask, but I'll ask a couple clarifying questions. Now, you guys have mentioned some of you have bridge programs. So are those programs only for your enrolled students? And is that like an extra fee that families, you know, pay to get access to a bridge program? Like, because we have a lot of families, for example, you know, that are in our public school. So like what kind of, could any of our families, you know, get a bridge type of access for their student?
Yeah. I'll start this one off. I at least know for our school at AIM Academy, we have tended to go toward it's just our students, but in the last year, somehow we have blossomed and our parents have told other friends who are in school districts. So we have opened it up in that way. So we pretty much welcome anyone. It is an additional fee by semester. We have 2 different like packages that they can buy in terms of hours. And those hours, depending on how much you buy, can carry over into the second semester too. So we kind of have different plans that we can work with.
Our bridge program at Woodland is pretty much just in the summer, but it's welcome to all students, no matter where you're from. For instance, this summer, we have, I believe, 7 outside students of a possible 17 registered right now. So there's always a healthy population of outside students who do the bridge program.
And our Horizons program is open to anyone who wants to join. I think this year we have 3 of our seniors from last year who rolled over into it, and we had 3 students who were new to Hilltop for the year. And we actually had a student come from Iowa once to be in our program. And there is a fee, and we have a couple different types. We have the program where you can just meet with somebody. We have the program where you can do the dual enrollment. And then we have what we call a super senior program. A lot of times when students come from outside of Hilltop, that is what they choose because there was a skill they needed to build, or a lot of times what we hear is a student was coming from a public school where, they were in classrooms of 30 students and just overwhelmed and just kind of hid as much as they could. So they want a year of building up some academic skills where they were overlooked because someone thought, well, you have autism, so we're not going to make you write, or you have autism, so you're probably not very good at math, and we're going to just have you practice to take the AccuPlacer, when a student was really wanting to get into physics and pre-calculus. So we give them the opportunity to do a second senior year.
And then just another clarifying question. You guys, a few of you mentioned, somebody mentioned Beacon in Florida and I'm not really sure what that is. So if you could explain what that school is, and also a landmark school. I don't know what that is either. And I don't know if other people on the call don't know either.
So Beacon and Landmark are both colleges that specifically serve students with learning differences. And it just depends on whether you like cold weather or warm weather. Landmark is in Vermont. It started originally as a college for students who had dyslexia. My understanding is that then they noticed that dyslexia and ADHD often came together. And then as they started having more students with ADHD, they noticed that and autism came together. So they revised their program to address those differences as well. And Beacon is very much the same. They are both very small schools, and they are very supportive and really lean into the technology and the accommodations and working with students to understand that part of their learning profile.
Add 2 real quickly, if I may. Both of those schools, if you're a parent on this call who's interested in a variety of options, it might be worthwhile to take a look at that, not only from a perspective of how our schools work with them, but also I know both of them have quite robust summer offerings for even high school students. So there's some of these kind of like bridge or college readiness summer programs for lots of students, as well as if you're a parent on the call who maybe has a student who's struggling in college. A few years down the line, they have some like credit remediation and take a gap year of sorts, or come to Landmark or Beacon for a year and go back to your other college. So those are schools that you can lean on for a variety of professional and personal resources at various points in your students' planning.
And then just one more question for me, and then we can open it up to other folks. But I know we have quite a few people on this call too who have students with intellectual disability. So do any of your programs, bridge programs, would that help them, or what sort of advice do you have? Because I know there are a lot of programs that are out there for students specifically with intellectual disability. So I don't know if any of you guys could speak to that, or if you don't know, that's okay. Maybe we need to plan another session for that.
Sorry, that's not our profile necessarily. I apologize.
Yeah, it's not ours either.
Same.
Same here, yeah.
All right, well, that looks like another meeting to be had with another group of fine panelists. I'm going to put out one question and then we'll bring it to the audience at large, and I will stop the recording when I do that. For your bridge programs, have you guys or are you aware of any school districts funding a bridge program, a student still being under their IEP and receiving funding through the school district? If you could, just a yes or no, if that's what you need to do, if you can elaborate a little bit, that's always helpful for us parents too.
Yeah, mine is for sure. And the students who are funded through their district tend to go to Woodland too. But in the past, I have worked with kids whose district has paid for them to go there. Yeah, so it is possible for sure.
Thank you, Jason.
Same here at AIM. We have district funded students and their funding can carry through as long as they kind of talk with their school district about it. It can carry through into these bridge programs.
And same for us. We have most of our students are coming through their school district. And for a few of them, the school district has even covered the cost of the boarding program. And they swap that out for the transportation piece. So some parents have found by saying like, oh, if you pay for him to stay at the school, you don't have to drive him every day. And it actually often works out to be less expensive that way.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And hang on one second here.